You feel nervous about what?
Just saying it's weird. I feel nervous about the interview.
Oh, well, that's weird.
I know we've done things before like this with the YouTube videos and all that, but as a recording, it suddenly feels legit. I don't know.
And welcome everyone to episode 8 of the Summoning Hour. Tonight we have a very special guest, my wife, and you might know her from her YouTube channel or maybe some of the tasty cakes that she posts on her Instagram and Facebook page, Tasty Spoons Bakery, Jinsui.
Hello.
Now, tonight it's not necessarily someone who's involved with esports or even in the industry itself, but as a former streamer and now filthy casual gamer, and husband, wife to me, and mother of our children who are also taking an interest in video games. She also has a unique perspective on video games and parenting, so I thought that this might be an interesting topic for us to talk about. So now that I've given you your little introduction,
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit about your history over time with video games?
Since the dawn of time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, I mean, my first real introduction was the Nintendo, like original old school Nintendo, really. And I mean, why that was such a big importance in my family was because it wasn't just, here, have a console and play, but it was actually a big family event. I mean, we got it for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
We had actually spent the holiday down in California with other family, and when we came back, Santa had left it for us, the one big item, which was Nintendo. And so we played, and it was Duck Hunt, it was Mario, and we would sit around as a family playing these things, and it was such a bonding moment for our family.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time to have games. I also remember it was the first time I ever saw a bug in a game. It was that my mom was playing Princess Peach, and she'd picked up a turnip, and no matter what she pressed, the turnip would not get off her head.
Yeah, I've never seen that bug.
Yeah, and it was funny because then to later in life be married to somebody who was in QA for the longest time looking for bugs and learning what that really meant and stress testing things and all that. At the time, it was just a hilarious family moment of, she couldn't let go of the turnip. So I mean, it started with that, and then there was a huge gap, honestly. And I don't know why, but we didn't play games for the longest time until my brother got, I believe it was the 64 was the next one I really remember. And my older brother, he was always a big gamer. And so he probably has a lot more stories to tell in that gap where I'm like, I don't know what happened between Nintendo and the 64, but we had Nintendo for a while as a family. But then by the time I was in like, what was that, elementary age, I guess, was the 64.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was, I often played the observer in watching my brother play because I loved the stories, I loved seeing the progression, but I was not.
I think that's just the role of the younger sibling, because I did that too.
Did you? Okay, because I don't know if it was because I just wasn't good at it, or if it was just, I think it was more just because it was specifically his console. And so it was like having my opportunity to play depended on whether or not he wanted to share it or if he wasn't playing it, which,
right.
Good luck finding time when he's not playing it at the time, because it was the new hot item. But it was, and then it was Sonic, and it was...
well, Sonic wasn't on the 64.
No, what was that? That was on...
Sega?
Sega, yes.
Sega
so
Genesis.
That's what it was. Sega, and then I think it was 64, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So Sega was Sonic, and then we also did Toe Jam and Earl, and all these other old school 90s games. I think there was also a brief period in between, and I don't remember what console it was, the Ninja Turtle game with those little mouser chomper things that you had to like jump over. And
they had Ninja Turtles on the NES, but then also on the Sega Genesis and SNES.
And I mean, so for that gap in my family personally, in between like Nintendo and Sega and 64 and all that, I still would play some games at friends' house, I should say. So when I would have like a slumber party, we would play things like the Ninja Turtle game or whatever other one that they got, which at the time for girls to have a console and to be playing video games was still a little bit unique.
Yeah.
It was usually like we're borrowing it from my dad or the older brother, or and in our case it was very much that it was my older brother. I didn't have my own console, but for my brother Josh, it was always Josh gets games. And I mean, to be fair, I never really vocalized like I want my own console, because it was just that it was very much kind of the man's world, which is funny because it's so different now. I think I told you that one time that I was at the mall and this little girl wanted to go into the GameStop, and she was shopping like with her grandma, and her grandma said, "Oh honey, those are boy toys. Let's move away." And I cringed so hard. I'm like, "Nuh-uh, it's so not. Like video games are for everyone." And it was just kind of that, I guess, old school thinking. But I mean, that was still something at the I think we were, I don't want to say we were on the tail end of that generation, because we were still the generation of the console at home.
Well, but I would say it's the end of that era of where there's definitely that split, because I mean, 10, 11 years ago, that was the beginning of PAX. And that's when social norm really just kind of exploded. Yeah. And I mean, that was also the time around when WoW got popular, and that just introduced a whole slew of people to playing PC games. Sure. And the Xbox had been out, so Xbox Live was the thing, so people were starting to understand that you could connect with a lot of different people more so than you thought. And mobile games, the casual games, so like all the Bejeweled games, all that stuff.
That one mobile horrible Simpsons game with the cupcakes, Bart Simpson and the cupcakes. Do you remember that one?
No.
Oh my gosh. It was like I don't even remember what, it was like one of those individual handheld games where it's like you buy it specifically for just that one game, almost like the Fisher games or whatever.
Ew.
And it was Simpsons, and it was like you were gathering cupcakes or something. I don't know why cupcakes was Simpsons, but...
You're talking, because Krusty the Clown, he probably it might have been pies in the game instead of cupcakes.
I thought it was cupcakes. Maybe. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. It's so old school. It's just one of those memory flashes.
The little handheld ones that had like the gray screen with the black outlines of the characters. I had a Street Fighter one.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Oh yeah.
I'm dating myself. Anyway, so I did play that, unfortunately, but I did. And so as far as like, my brother and I played stuff, so I think that my first really getting into the hot seat and playing, either for my own enjoyment, no longer just playing the Observer, was Mario Kart, and then of course GoldenEye was one of my favorites. Nice. Loved doing GoldenEye, and my brother and I used to play those religiously for a while, and around the same time, as far as PC games go, my family finally got back into doing the family gaming thing, because once it became my brother's console, unfortunately the whole family aspect kind of stopped, as far as all of us gaming, and my parents were doing what parents do, taking care of business and taking care of the house, and gaming just kind of became something for my brother and I, but the first time we really sat down as a family was playing Myst, and then later Riven. And I know you're all jaded about it.
Yep. I wanted my PC time so I could play Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, while my brother would beat his head against puzzles for like hours at a time, and
but that
looked like so boring.
Oh, it's not though. It was such a great experience, and especially as a family. I mean, we took turns in the hot seat of who was driving the character. But I mean, it was I think for the first time, really seeing a huge story development in a game. Yeah. Instead of just this scrolling platformer or whatever. it was finally like this big, you're unraveling a story.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, you know, graphics are amazing, and oh my gosh, and it's this like, you have to actually keep a notebook of all the little clues to put it together, and we totally nerded out about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Good.
and it was an amazing memory.
Yeah.
It was so fun to really just fully dive into it, to where instead of just the usual, let's all just zone out to TV and have dinner and whatever, classic American TV dinners, it was, let's sit down and game. And we would do it for, you know, an hour or more, and it was great. It was such a good moment. And then we had a big falling out of games, where then we had some unhealthy relatives that kind of took gaming to either an extreme or neglected other responsibilities and things like that. And so then all of a sudden this shift happened to where video games kind of became this unhealthy thing in my family, and it was kind of villainized, which was really odd after having, you know, this family game time. And I know my parents personally, like they used to spend a lot of time at the arcades, and for them, especially my dad, kind of being one of those first generation gamers. I mean, his friend in college actually was one of the guys that helped create Frogger, you know.
Nice.
So already having this history, and then all of a sudden it shut down, and it was just, games became this negative stigma because it was in association to these unhealthy people that had been in our lives all of a sudden. So suddenly it became villainized, and video games just stopped. And I didn't have a drive initially. Like I played with my brother, but I was still very much kind of a casual gamer. I'd started getting into it, and then it was easy at the time with being young to just kind of be convinced that it was a bad habit.
Yeah.
You know, that you do it to an extreme and it becomes bad. And which, I mean, there is some truth in having it balanced, but I think that, you know, especially as parents, it's so easy to flare up and get in arms and worry about extremes, or worry about, you know, is this unhealthy for my family? And not at all to blame my parents for the decisions that they made. They did the best that they were trying to do. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but just kind of that whole, it later came into my perspective of being a parent of kids who want to be gamers.
Yeah.
So having that experience of what it was like to suddenly have video games villainized, and then it didn't come back around in my family until I had already moved out.
Right.
And then it was like the Wii was introduced, and then my parents were like, well, it's exercise, it's healthy, and then they kind of started getting into it, and then after a while they're like, well, now that we don't have to worry about the parenting aspect of, is this getting in the way of grades, or are my kids gonna grow up and be unhealthy? At that point, it's like, well, they're adults and they're on their own, so if they make unhealthy decisions, that's on them. Sink or swim. So, but at that time, I hadn't touched video games at all until we were up at college and we started doing the drunken Wii bowling nights, which I don't recommend for people to do drunk. I'm not trying to sell that if anyone ever still plays the Wii anymore. But it was fun. So
yeah, it was. Except for when people were like reaching too far with the Wii bowling,
hand on the desk or something. Yeah, there was so many. We'd all laugh at the little warnings of have your little, you know,
have the strap
on, and yet we all still ended up at some point lobbing the remote or hitting our hands on something. And so, you know, it wasn't until I met you, and up at college when we met, you know, and then it's, oh, you know, I got this boyfriend and he's into this stuff, so okay, I can't just shut it down and be like, no, video games are evil and how dare you, you know. And I didn't have it in my mind that they were evil, but it was just kind of one of those like, I'm cautious, it should be in very small doses. And so for you to be like, I'm up all night raiding and playing WoW, and like, what was it, like on our third month together when we're waiting outside
at midnight
at GameStop in freaking winter time
to get the Burning Crusade.
Oh god. And I'm like, wow, okay, this guy's pretty hardcore. So, and I was head over heels, so, you know, I'm gonna have to find a way to reintroduce, because it was such an important part of your life, and you were such an important part of mine, And I'm like, all right, I obviously can't just say I'm going to ignore this and
Right.
just be like, it's just a bad habit he has. Like, no, you were passionate about it. And you were quickly working your way towards that being your career. And
Yep.
you knew from the get-go, this is like where I want to go. And so I'm like, all right, clearly I need to reintroduce myself to games. But again, still as the observer, being really tentative and just like, I don't know if I'm going to play this. It's
I mean, we played. Let's see. You watched me play WoW. You dabbled with WoW.
Yeah, the day you came in the dorm room and found me secretly playing WoW because I like downloaded a demo, and I think you just about lost your S there. You're just like, oh, you're playing WoW. And I'm like, I'm trying it. I'm giving it a go. And then you told me as long as I chose Horde, then
everything was fine.
Everything would be okay.
Yep.
But if I chose Alliance, you'd break up with me. No.
I never said that.
It's implied. No.
So then I had the Wii. Mm-hmm. I had like Mario Kart on there and various forms.
Yeah.
And then I had the PlayStation 2 up at college. And I think you just watched me play some games then. And it was really just Mario Kart and WoW, really.
Funny enough, though, Guitar Hero, too.
Oh, Guitar Hero.
Cannot forget Guitar Hero. Thank you, Carpal Tunnel.
Yeah.
But so here's the thing, though, was up at college, it wasn't just reintroducing it because of you.
Right.
But there was also a lot of interest from other people there. But then, because of our a lot of the community activities in the dorm rooms that they hosted a lot of those competitive tournaments through video games.
Yep.
And it was the competitive Wii Bowling, competitive Guitar Hero.
Yep.
And it was my first time really being like, oh my gosh, this is a social community thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then that was the same year you took me to PAX.
Yeah.
And I had never been to PAX before. And
nope.
Oh my gosh, like talk about culture shock. It was like, whoa, this is a whole huge thing. It was like a whole nother world walking into it. And I mean, aside from the fact that I was totally one of those just like trick-or-treating loot grubby, just I gotta get all the freebies. Yep. So I'm like, oh, I can play your game and you'll give me a shirt. Okay, you have free energy drinks? Sure, But I mean, it was, and then seeing cosplay was just incredible. And that these people weren't just playing games, they were living and breathing this culture.
Mm-hmm.
And then more and more suddenly hearing people talk about how much this culture helped them through hard times, or how much it brought them into social things. And here I had been raised thinking video games are antisocial.
Yeah.
Video games equal unbalanced. Video games equal unhealthy. I'm going, wait a second. That's not really true. I mean, it can be, just like anything.
Yep.
I mean, anything in excess can be too much. But to realize that there's actually a whole community that's very welcoming out there. And then I wanted to get back into games, but I felt so scared being like, I want to be the noob that everyone's going to hate. They're going to be like, bah, you suck. Why are you trying to play this? And of course, you're going to find people that do that.
Yep.
But you kept encouraging me and saying, like, no, there's people out there, though, that are going to want to help you into this world because it is such a community, because it's important to them, because they're like, hey, you're getting into it. Awesome. Let me share this passion with you and help you through. And that's when it suddenly started shifting that perspective and realizing, here we are at college having these fun community events and getting to know people through video games. I mean, there's people there that I never knew before, and suddenly we're laughing on a team and playing a game together. Yeah. And the next time I'm walking around campus and see them, they're like, hey, you rocked that solo on Guitar Hero.
Even when you were working in the dish room at the manager, the shift manager, and then her husband or fiance at the time was also one of the dishwashers with you.
Yes.
And they both played WoW.
And they were just like, oh, you got to join our server and play with us. And like, yeah, it was suddenly just like, oh my gosh, like this is as soon as I told them like, yeah, I'm totally a noob and I'm like not even level 12. I haven't even finished like the free demo basically.
Yeah.
I'm just getting to that part where they're going to tell me I have to actually do quests with other people. And I'm like, oh God, I can't just solo this the whole time. Like, no, I have to be social. What? and then realizing how awesome that was.
Yeah, video games suddenly became
Um,
the best icebreaker ever.
it did, and that was really surprising to me. And then it casts a different feel. So the fond memories of doing it as a family and how much that brought us together,
Mm-hmm.
and then seeing how much socially outside of the home that was bringing other people together, and then realizing this in between gap where it was like, boo, video games are evil. It totally shifted that perspective. Go, oh, that was very much fear based
Mm-hmm.
and was based off of unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Because also at that time growing were chat rooms, online,
Yep.
PC games and all that kind of stuff that I think for my family and my parents in particular was very scary.
Mm-hmm.
It was so easy at that time to fall into the wrong kind of chat room, or moderating that kind of stuff was still pretty hazy at the time.
And I mean, racking up bills with just being like how the internet was charged with like AOL at the time,
and it
your phone bill would just go up if you were using dial-up and stuff like that.
It's too easy to go down the rabbit hole on all the wrong sites or all the wrong people, and so it became this negative stigma, I think, based so much off of fear and unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And as a parent, it's, I now have this new perspective. So, and if you need to jump into the questions, I know I'm just kind of
no. I think that's just a natural conversation. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, from college to, I mean, we've been together 12 years now, or almost 12 years. Yeah. And so it's been like an introduction to games again.
Yeah.
And you've seen a growth of not only is it just a social thing that you can play with other people, but it's also competitive, and it's also creating creating esports, and even then it's also going back to your roots of Myst with these heavily story-driven experiences. I mean, playing through Life is Strange and Firewatch, and
which I definitely glom towards those story-based things.
Yeah.
And stories, games and such. I mean, and at the time, in college, I got my degree in English literature, and I think that I was impressed with how much video game play is a lot of that. It's the progression of a story. It's its own form of literature. I mean, and as a kid, I used to love those choose your own adventure books.
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you want to choose this and flip forward to such and such page, and suddenly in games seeing like, oh my god, it is an actual like choose your own adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so stoked about that when I first played, especially Life is Strange, which was one of those first ones that we streamed all the way through. I dabbled in a few other like I am toast,
I am
bread, and they're poop in my soup and other silly
Taco Apocalypse.
Yeah,
and,
just little
food-based stuff.
Food-based stuff at the time, because my whole YouTube channel was food-based recipes, and then video games that were based off of food. But clearly, Life is Strange had nothing to do with food. It was just.
I think we had hit the bottom of the barrel with poop in your soup on Steam.
Yeah, I think we were kind of done after that. We had to branch out a little from there. And so, gosh, that game. It was hilarious and so just
wrong. That's perfect for our boys.
It really is. Poop humor. Absolutely. It was a win for the kids. But Life is Strange was that first like, oh, this actually is kind of intriguing, and then really getting into it, and it was so beautifully done. With the story progression that I was so into it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think that was my first time since like Myst and Riven really getting engaged into a story. I'd tried so many other little games in between. I was like, yeah, it's fun. I mean, even WoW to a degree, I mean, they try to kind of set up that progression, or even Guild Wars 2, the beginning, it's like you kind of get sucked into the story, but then once you branch off into the different quests, and there's so many little side quests and little side stories, that it was easy for me to lose myself in the main storyline.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be fair, I never really stuck with it enough to get that satisfaction from it. but part of the reason is because it didn't intrigue me as much.
Yeah, and I mean, in like WoW, at least at that time, and kind of later college after the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, like it was really hard to get into that main story arc because there was such a huge gap in between it, and so you had to really understand the storylines of the individual zones and parts of the zones, and like those storylines, while they were there, they weren't always the most interesting or intricate or challenging or just like kind of, oh, that actually had a big reveal kind of thing. They were all just kind of like dime stop shops in terms of storytelling, and it all contributed to creating that consistent world and following the lore, but it wasn't the pop bang fizz as like a narrative driven experience.
Yeah, I mean the progression of the story is a lot slower, and as you're saying, even kind of choppy to a degree. So it makes it a lot harder to really feel engaged. I think at that point you're playing it just because you've kind of been seniored into feeling so invested in creating your character and living this experience that it's kind of like, okay, I gotta stick through this because I've been here for this long.
And I mean, WoW is just one of those games that has so much content and so much that you can explore and do, and then they have the nice carrot on a stick at almost all the time, and it's just time to plod through, and next thing you know, you've logged like 24 days active in the game as one character, and you're like, oh, I know a lot more about the story now. And that's...
See, but like if they set up WoW like Life is Strange, if they did it like a little offshoot to really get into like a single storyline character and not all these little side quests necessarily, but just unraveling one story, I think I could really get into that. Well then, I'm going to have to introduce you to the RPG campaign of Warcraft 3. Oh? Yeah. Okay. I'm willing. I'm game. Ooh. We'll have to... There's been like some Warcraft 3 stuff going on with Blizzard, so maybe we'll be able to find you a cheap copy real quick. And the addiction back when are coming back. And you get to experience my member berries. Exactly. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, so... Yeah, so I mean, like, the community, the kind of reintroduction, wanting to be involved because it was something that you were also passionate about. And then we became parents. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum. And it completely was a game changer, because then realizing, oh, our kids are growing up in this era where games, electronics, all of it is accessible. I mean, now you get a freaking constant... I mean, it used to be back in the day, you know, you buy the little DS or whatever that you take with you. And now, I mean, everyone's phone. Yep. And I mean, I've seen freaking elementary kids with phones, which, I mean, if your kid has a phone, that's fine with you, but I'm all old school, like, not till you're in college or high school. And but, I mean, it's just like, it's accessible everywhere. Yep. And video games is such a thing. And then just on top of that, the fact that Dad has a career in video games. How are you not going to have that be a part of our family dynamic? When they were newborns, they were falling asleep on my chest while I was playing like Grand Theft Auto 4 or... How many pictures of them asleep on you with your controller on their little diaper butt, you know? And I'm playing Arkham or Backbreaker or whatever, and it's just like... I think Backbreaker and Super Meat Boy were like the soundtrack of my pregnancy, where I would like fall asleep and listening to like the little splat shit, god damn it, you know, it's like Super Meat Boy. And I actually tried playing, what was it, Brink? Yes. And I had to stop because I was getting so worked up. My blood pressure was actually going up too high during pregnancy because I was just getting so competitive. And she had a filthy mouth. Oh my gosh. I get the worst gamer Tourette's. I normally don't swear that much. I mean, it's different once the kids go to sleep. But this was a whole new level. It's a whole different thing for me. It was fantastic. The whole angry rage-a-hole side comes out of me, which is kind of therapeutic in its own way. You know, it's good. Anyway, so suddenly realizing, you know, like, yeah, I could kind of be the observer. I could kind of casually a little bit. You know, and it was just us.
Yeah.
But in realizing we have kids coming into this, I'm like, I did not want to villainize video games,
Right.
but I wanted to emphasize balance. But what I didn't want was it to be that same fear-based, you know, like my parents, in that I'm just going to shut it down, or I'm not even going to try. You know, the video games also in their own, I mean, so as a parent, and especially, and I don't know why, but so much, especially in the mom community, still very strong. There's a lot of that sexism still going on, and battles of you know, moms against video games in particular.
Mm-hmm. How so?
Well, for one, I've never really seen a strong front in dads against video games.
True.
And I don't know why.
That's a great question. I don't know why either.
It's just one of those. Like, but I think that because there's still such a largely dominant male community for video games, and that is changing, which I'm excited about. Having more of that equality in gaming, and even in the representation of females in video games. You know, there's more argument on appropriate armor, or, you know, yeah, you leveled up and now you get to wear a metal bikini. Like, yeah, how practical is that? But so, and encouraging, there's more YouTubers out there of gaming girls and women. I still wish there would be a little bit less of that selling through sex of, you know, gamer girls. You look that up and it's always like shots of cleavage and butts. But so it's like, come on, ladies, let's make a stronger force in that. But for moms in particular, and I think part of it is because there is still a lot of that, I mean, that kind of mama bear mentality. And not to say that fathers aren't protective of their kids in any right, but I think that moms tend to be some of the loudest when it comes to protecting their kids, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you think of it as a Yelp review, we're the ones that are out there doing the negative, going, this is bad for my children. You know, and I mean, obviously there's exceptions. I'm not saying this is exactly it, but just from my observations, you know, isn't there even like a whole group of like moms against video games?
Yeah, I don't know if that's actually a legitimate group or if that's just like a hoax site, but yeah,
maybe, it's like... But it is that anytime I've seen, you know, news clips or things of parents going actively against video games or blaming video games for negative decisions or outcomes with their kids, it's often mothers.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from a place of fear and concern.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with how much video games have been getting the spotlight, it's very much just like a new movement, like rock and roll music or comic books or D&D, when those were the eras of what parents were concerned a lot about. Like, video games have been kind of attacked and kind of thrown under the bus whenever convenient since like the late 90s, early 2000s. I mean,
absolutely. And I think a lot of that comes from fear and unknown, again, because I mean, so you had me read an article not that long ago about the mom whose son started playing games.
Oh, that's right.
And because of that, he started talking back more. He started
he was pulling out of like family time.
Yeah, not wanting to come down for like family dinner, wanting to play his games, was wanting to connect with his friends through this game and all that kind of stuff. And she got mad that he was, you know, mouthing off and all that. And my first instinct was, he sounds age appropriate. And like, yeah, if I had a choice between playing with my friends and playing a game versus let's have family game night.
And
like,
playing the game that he was interested in.
Yeah, because the first time he found something he was interested in, I think. Is that
it was the first time, like, he played soccer, but like it wasn't like his thing, and suddenly there's a new game that he and his friends can connect with, and suddenly he's prioritizing that over family time or watching the normal TV shows and stuff like that.
Which, in my mind, doesn't say that video games are an evil culprit. For him to be talking back, and he was what, middle school age?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's middle school. You know, like, to say he's talking back. My preteen kid is arguing with me.
Yeah, he's like 12 or 14, something like that.
Normal. Video games are not. Your kid's not wanting to spend family fun time with you when they can go and do the things that are their passions and interest. Well, yeah. Again, that's kind of appropriate for that age, in
Yeah.
my opinion. But here was my question: was did she even play the game?
Yeah.
Did she even ask him about it? She kept saying she gave him extra time, but never once did she mention even understanding the game in the slightest.
Yeah.
She said that she thought it was a violent game,
What game
and
was
she
it?
thought that that might, like, her impression was that it was violent
Yeah.
because he was mouthing off to her, and he never done that before.
Yeah.
And my impression was that he finally found something he was confident in and felt the confidence to fight for it.
Hmm.
And to want to kind of argue back.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that there aren't games out there that, obviously you have to pay attention to those ratings. You have to be involved.
Yeah.
Those ratings are there for a reason.
Yeah, and I mean, the other detail from that story was like the kid was underage for the game that he was playing.
That's right,
like,
because it was some
it was
higher
like rated.
age group.
It was rated M for mature.
And yet she let him play it anyways.
And yeah.
And I'm like, yeah.
Or
So
it was the UK rating, the Peggy brand. I forget the actual ratings.
But still, she made a point to say it was beyond his grouping.
Yeah.
And so yet she still actively chose to let him to play that. Which, fine. If you decide to let your kid play a rating that's higher than what is recommended, you're the judge of what your kid can handle.
Yeah.
I mean, there was times our kids would play with toys where they're like, that's not for a 3-year-old. And like, my 3-year-old can handle this because he's proven to me he can handle this.
Right.
He's out of that phase of sticking crud in his mouth, or whatever. Obviously, you can tailor it to the individual. But if you're seeing those negative effects, and either way, just like anything, any kind of social gathering, and especially with these games, almost all these games nowadays have the ability to voice chat, right?
Yep.
You have to be involved.
And yeah, exactly.
You can't just say, if I have my friends come up and say, Mommy, I want to have a play date with this kid, I'm not going to go, okay, I don't know anything about them. Go have fun. I wouldn't do the same with video games either. Mommy, I want to play this game. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Do it. I would go, all right, what game are you interested in? Who are you playing with? And I would sit in and be a part of it, or say, let's set up your character together and listen to the voice chat together, or hey, you want to team up? Okay, but you're going to only meet up with your cousin or these people that I know and moderate it. Because as a parent, you have to be involved.
Yep.
And I think even Will Wheaton has argued this so many times too. Where
it's it was I think it was 2004 PAX. It was in the era of Jack Thompson, and Will Wheaton did the keynote address at PAX, and he tells the story of one of his teenage sons who, while he was on a trip, he asked the son was asking Will Wheaton if he could play Grand Theft Auto. I think it was 3 at the time, 2 or 3, and Will Wheaton was just, because he knew the personality of his son, he was able to just ask a simple question and you understand that this is all fictional,
right?
And his son responds back sarcastically, no, I'm going to go pick up hookers and beat them get my money back, kind of story. And he's and in that moment I knew my son was ready, because he understood the context of the game, and he was, as a parent, Will Wheaton was understanding of what his kid could handle.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, yeah, it's not a new lesson, folks, but I know it wasn't a considered message in that kind of 2004 to 2010 time, and only recently have I recalled it ever being even on the front page of the ESRB group, the ones that set the ratings for video games in North America. And I was watching a video last night, and it's just hey, these are the ratings, pay attention to them. Here's some other parent resources. By the way, the best thing is to play games with your kids.
Absolutely. Family's a game together, stay together kind of thing. Yeah. And you got to, I mean, if my kid is showing an interest in baseball, I want to get involved and go, okay, how can I understand this and support you?
Yep.
I'm not just going to go, all right, I'll drop you off, and then I don't know a damn thing about the game. I want to know. You want to be involved. And as a parent, that goes for so many aspects, including video games. And even especially so because video games are so interconnected and accessible with so many strangers as well.
Yeah.
I understand the concern as a parent, and that there is a lot out there. It is easy to stumble into the wrong place, the wrong people, just like I said, before with my parents' concern, and that, the chat rooms, and like you can easily go into the wrong place. Which is why you just have to play it smart and teach your kids to play it smart.
Yep.
You can't tell them don't ever use it, because in this day and age, that's impossible.
Right.
I feel like it would be socially crippling to tell my kids you cannot play games, or you cannot go on the computer.
Right.
You cannot, do these things, because it is such a social thing.
Yeah. And I mean, even outside of video games, it's like, if you're not letting your kid have screen time, you're putting them at a social and then like a not educational, but like learning how to use the tools of the time disadvantage.
Absolutely. I mean, how many jobs out there now require you to have this base knowledge?
Yeah.
Which is way beyond what we ever learned as kids. As our computer skills with the big blocky computers.
I mean, when I
orange with the little green screen.
Yeah, the green screen.
But like, it does put you at a disadvantage for learning those things, for applicable skills in the working field later. But also, like nowadays, programming is becoming a huge thing for kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our son had the week of programming. That was emphasized through the school, where they said, come home and play these games that gear you towards getting that mindset of doing computer programming.
And, I mean, he's in the first grade.
Yeah. I mean, that's freaking insane. I mean, we have a board game even that's designed for getting kids in the mindset of programming. We're raising a whole generation of kids that need to be savvy for these kind of things. And I mean, even that aside, I mean, just basic friendship socialization. If he's not able to play, if our kids couldn't play these games, that kind of puts them at a disadvantage. They could get past that. They could find other connections. But it is a huge community, and learning, I feel like it will be easier for them to kind of learn into it now, to find that balance later in life, than it would be to say, you can't have anything, and then I'm going to suddenly switch it on and go, here's this thing you've never used before.
And with hopefully with our observing and participation, they'll understand, we'll be able to kind of help shape that understanding of that balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then also with video games, there's so many amazing skills outside of even just programming. The whole hand-eye coordination, linguistics. I think it was in your interview with Rob Thody,
mm-hmm.
where he had mentioned that playing video games in Japanese actually helped him.
That's right, yeah.
To kind of refresh and keep active in that. Yeah. And that you even said that, some of your first experiences in reading was video games.
Yes.
And it's so true. I mean, even recently, our son, first grader, is sitting there and he's reading out the text in the game that they were playing.
Oh, that's right. They were playing Monster Hunter.
To our youngest, yeah. And he was reading it.
Yep.
And he was so excited. And I mean, he's struggled with reading. And finding a book that he's interested in has been a challenge. But video games he was interested in, and suddenly he's reading. And I'm like, whoa. This is huge.
That's a pretty cool moment.
Because it's following a passion and an interest.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I ignore that as a parent to go, no, you stop reading that because that's video games. Like, no, he's reading. Like, this is awesome. Or even watching them do things like, oh, it's a rhythm. Or, no, you have to, like, wait this many times. Or they're counting up their points. I mean, there's math skills. There's reading skills. There's problem-solving skills.
Mm-hmm.
And this is even just aside from hand-eye coordination or whatever, that everyone wants to emphasize just hand-eye coordination. But I'm like, no, there's more, so much more. And then later when you get to games like when you're raiding together in in like World of Warcraft or whatever, where you each have a part, and it's this balance, and it's this teamwork, and it's this, beautiful synchronization of, if you time it just right, and you do your part just right, and you work as a team, you communicate, and more dots. It comes together.
Yep.
And that's such a skill.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely a skill that a lot of the times people who are either not inclined for athletics or whatever can sometimes be in a disadvantage of.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that I never grew up doing sports. But had I found a community where I still could have had that team mentality, that grouping, that feeling like, I've got this role to play.
Yeah.
Where others are counting on you. I mean, there's so much to that. So I mean,
Yeah. I mean, you're touching on
am
esports at this point of
I?
like, and like
That's true.
the positive,
Sports and esports.
yeah, and I mean, you're talking about team building. You're talking about developing trust with another person because there's consequences on if someone can't execute a plan.
Absolutely.
And I mean, this is the difference between winning and losing and putting your team up for a cash prize or for some of these teams having a stable salary.
See, and that's the thing. It's funny. I say that if you're not athletically inclined, but at this point, I mean, you can be considered an athlete doing esports. I mean, it is physically tolling.
Yeah.
And like, our kids, it used to be in our day if you're like, I want to play video games for a job, and then grown-ups would be like, let's think of something realistic. I hated that phrase. Think of something realistic. Screw you, it's my dream. And now it is. It's a thing. I mean, in watching esports, that there's now esports bars coming out, that there's these tournaments, that it's being recognized by athletic stations and people backing this, and it's like, it's incredible to watch this growing. And seeing it become a thing and getting excited for the era that our kids are growing up into, and going, oh my god, you could legitimately be an esports athlete and say, like, my kid is doing this, and it's insane. It's weird,
and I mean, now
so
thinking about that, like, from the esports side, from the games industry side, people now can grow up practicing all of those skills that take them to being a professional. So like, you could start doing mouse and keyboard drills with your 4-year-old, because soon there's going to be like Pee-wee League of Legends,
right?
And then it's going to go up into elementary school. Mm-hmm. You'll have your youth league esports, then your middle school competitive leagues, and then your high school like state ranked teams playing games and having college scouts come out to them, or professional scouts, because
honey, have your juice box. Mommy, my hand is cramping. You play through the pain. Like, just
where's the Bengay?
No, right?
But I mean, you will have that. I mean, high school esports is already happening.
Yeah.
So if there's a chance of a scholarship in your kid, why wouldn't you support that if they're going to go off to the university? Absolutely. Or with this being a skill that you can literally practice from day one without needing a school or whole organization or anything, because you hop online and you start practicing these skills, playing these games, you can circumvent college right out the gate in 10 years.
We're seeing that a lot now anyways, with internet accessibility and being able to learn anything. Anybody can kind of become self-taught, entrepreneurial, just kind of, you dive into it, you teach yourself. And with, for one, college rates being how much they are, which is astronomical. But especially, I think video games were kind of one of the first to showcase this, that you could be some kid, alone in your room late at night, and you can freaking be a hero. You can kick butt. You can climb the ladder. You could be the level 80 whatever player.
You could win a game.
You could win a game. You could be, the star. And in an awkward time when you're growing up and you can feel like a nobody or whatever. And then it started to branch out to being, you have a community. And pretty soon you're all building up to this thing. And this fantastical idea of anyone could do this if you put your mind to it. This accessibility. And now it's upping the game even more, where it's like, not anybody can do this. But if you try damn hard and you can get there, and it's suddenly, this competition, and it's becoming this career, this job, this way of life, and raising people, as either an employer, as a boss, as a manager, as a parent, raising people in this industry to make these accomplishments. I mean, it's the new way of the world. I mean, to come from that Nintendo first home console all the way to now seeing it be this huge career and growing thing. I mean, now to where it's like collegiate. I mean, the day that we see an entire college that's just for gaming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it makes me think, what was that video game high school?
Yeah.
Which, if you guys haven't seen that, you got to see it. It's
Yep.
What was that on? Originally a YouTube.
I believe
channel, but now
it's
I think it's on it was on Netflix for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the VG. What was it? VGHS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe that was the rocket jump crew who made that.
Yeah, so. But it was just that whole idea of it's an entire school.
Yeah.
It's like Harry Potter, but with video games, you know?
I mean, China's already there.
Yeah.
I mean, they have schools dedicated. Like,
really?
Yes.
It's just for games?
Well, it's not just for games. Like, they have...
Or is it...
It's, like, their only athletics is esports.
Ooh.
And they're literally just farming out players.
That's insane.
To learn how to play these games.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What a world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, as a parent in this day and age, you can't ignore that, and you have to be involved. And for myself, being a casual gamer, am I going on too long?
No,
okay. It's just as a casual gamer, I thought, you know, I may not personally be ever a huge gamer, as much as you might want me to be. No, I will always enjoy a good game, and I have a whole lineup now of games that I want to play, which I never had that before.
Yeah.
Which is exciting, and I would like to get back into streaming some of it, or at least a minimum just playing it. I mean, for us as a couple, we found that it's actually kind of a fun date night in a way. Once the kids are down, it's like, dude, let's get on, let's play this game, let's see what's going to happen.
Nope.
And it's better than some of just, you know, the binge watching a series on Netflix where it's like, we've seen like so much, it gets kind of boring. But this is a lot more interactive. It feels more like an involved date than just sitting back and doing nothing, but staring at a show. Unless it's Game of Thrones, because that one's just like, wow, you know.
Yeah.
So many wow moments.
Or Archer.
Or Archer. Yes, which that starts soon.
Yeah.
Anyways. You can tell we like shows. No, but there was something, as a couple, I think, that even kind of is...
I mean, I got to experience your first time with games, like feeling something for the games, and...
Yes, one, the Life is Strange
it's
definitely got me. I was
yeah.
like, oh my god, these are heavy decisions.
Yeah.
Which, if you ever wanted to see, we actually did the entire game through, entire playthrough, and you can laugh at me at the end because I made a total flub.
Spoilers.
A little bit of a spoiler, but you got to see it because it was just...
It was terrible and hilarious, and I cackled.
It was. I still can't believe I did that. Anyways.
So yeah, I mean, actually, why don't you talk about where people can reach out to you?
Yes.
And maybe we'll have another video soon.
Yeah, hopefully. I still need to finish Firewatch, but we might actually just pick up where we're at in Firewatch and go from there, or we might start with a whole new game. I'm not sure. Oh, can I say though, really quick though?
Sure.
So not being somebody that is huge into personally gaming, but you know, like I said, wanting to be involved, especially for our kids and for you, for the family, that I can't ignore that this is a big part of our family, and I have to be involved. And as a parent, you don't have to be involved by just playing. There's so many ways to be involved.
Yeah.
Where you never even pick up the controller. And like one of the things I did, cosplay at PAX last year's Tracer.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And I maybe played Overwatch once.
Yeah.
And honestly, so the funny thing was I didn't even know Tracer's catchphrases. So when I was there and everyone starts being like, Tracer, and they're all like calling out to me and they're saying these catchphrases, I'm like, yeah. I don't know. And by the end of PAX, I'm like saying the catchphrases and doing the poses because I learned enough from everybody else in teaching me what that character was. And I'm like, I just want to do the costume because it looks fun, and I had the haircut at the time for it.
Right.
It seemed like a total lame excuse, but I wanted to experience what it was to do cosplay.
Yeah.
And to step into a character like that. And then after that, like, to see our sons want to borrow the costume and having them get excited about the idea of, like, what could we cosplay as?
Yeah.
And even you got inspired. And it was like, a realization that I don't even have to necessarily play to still get into it, to still show my support, to still be involved, to still find a way to be fun in it. Because it's like, the fun for me was accomplishing making the costume and being a part of PAX and experiencing it as a different character that I'd never done before.
Yeah.
Even if I didn't know the game through and through. But at the time you'd been trying it, our boys love playing Overwatch.
Yeah, they definitely glom to it.
Yeah, even though they just basically do the little like
training
area. We don't actually let them play like live online. But they love it. And now every time they see Tracer, they're like, "It's you, Mom!" Like, they get so excited about it. And for me, it was really exciting to be that for them. Like, I kind of became this celebrity. And while I was there, I remember a little girl at PAX where the mom asked if I could get a picture with her, and she's like, "You're her favorite character." And it wasn't me anymore. I was Tracer. And it was this celebrity moment.
Suddenly you're Snow White in Disneyland.
And it was just like, and this little girl looking at me like, "Oh my God, like, you are her."
Yeah.
And it was this amazing moment in realizing, oh, I'm bringing to life this character. And so I was like, sure. And so I did a little pose with her, and she was just like awestruck by it. And it was so exciting to be that for someone. And how many people wanted to do pictures and were just geeking out over it. And I went into it just wanting to have fun, wanting to just be a character, try something new. It was just like, yeah, sure, why the hell not? I'll do cosplay. And in the end, realizing, oh my gosh, these characters mean so much to people. And it was so much more than just a cosplay. I got to experience something even bigger than that. And then inspiring our kids, and then still to this day being like, "Mom, that's you, that's Tracer, that's you." And be like, "Yeah, that's me." It was just so exciting, you know, and that there's so many ways to be involved in games that you don't have to necessarily play, but there is an importance, I think, in being involved as a parent, as a partner, as even just, you know, a person in this day and age. It's such a growing thing. But anyway, so
I like it.
Yeah, and if you don't like a game that your kid's playing, Chimpoko-mon it, right? You just you play it and act like it's the shit, and then your kids will be like, "Oh God, my parents are playing this. I don't like it anymore."
Nope.
No.
Or suddenly you're involved, and then it's fine.
Exactly. Or you can, you know, look at it and be like, "This is
not appropriate for you."
Appropriate. You can play that, you know, when you're older and legally responsible for yourself. Anyways. But yes, so personal plugs. There is what is my channel on YouTube anymore? Is it Jinsoy?
Yeah, it's Jinsoy.
Just Jinsoy, and that's a J
3N
S0Y for Jinsoy. And that's where we've done a lot of the YouTube videos of my adventures through gaming, and trying to get in there. I was kind of rocking the pink hair look for a while, which is kind of fun. But I don't know if I'll keep doing the pink hair. We'll see. And then aside from that, Tasty Spoons Bakery. That's my latest venture. Starting a home bakery. You can check me out on Instagram, or you can also check me out on Facebook. I post a lot of pictures and things on there of custom cakes, cupcakes, and cookies. I've done a few video game ones on there too, which are really fun. We've done Minecraft. I just did a PUBG cake, which actually turned out pretty fun.
Yep, that was really good.
Yeah, so if you get a chance, check those out. I've also done like Pokemon, a few other fun cake designs and everything. So look me up. That's Tasty Spoons Bakery. And am I forgetting anything? I think that's it.
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So thanks for having me on to ramble at you.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, this was a fun topic, and I'm happy to hear that you're more interested in gaming.
Yeah.
And it's been a positive experience and something that you found a role in as a mother.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, it was such a fun memory, and still such a fond memory of gaming as a family. And I really do believe in that whole families that game together stay together.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's board games, video games, whatever, but video games are definitely the new thing.
Absolutely.
And there's always a way to try and be involved. You know?
Yep.
And I can't emphasize that enough. The importance of being involved in your kids' interests. And if anything scares you, if you're worried, I mean, all you gotta do is just look into it, invest, and be involved. is the biggest thing,
That's
I guess.
it.
Yeah. So,
That's it.
anyways,
All right.
thank you.
Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week. And I believe my next guest is actually going to be an old coworker of mine, animator Paul Zimmer. And so we'll get to talk to him about his education and his background as an animator. Until next time, take it easy.